Although WordPress does offer a tremendous selection of mastheads that you could use, what we're going to be doing for our PLE is to create our own original masthead. And this is an example of the one that I've been working on for the site I'm creating. And what we're going to be using is a program that's online. It's called Pixlr, and it's at pixlr.com. And what it is, it's a program very similar to Photoshop. And let me just open up the editor here. This is the one that I've been working on, and you can see it's got a bunch of layers over here on the side, and it's got a toolbar very similar to Photoshop. And I can go ahead and turn on and off different layers so you could see. And what I'll do now is I'm going to take you through a step-by-step on how I made this particular masthead, and I'll also put up some tutorials on individual tools. So let's get started. The first thing you're going to want to do after opening up the website is to open Image Editor, this button right here, and this will open up this dialog box. And in this case we're going to create a brand new image, so we'll create a new image and we can name it. I'll name it Masthead 2, seeing I already created one. And the presets, it's got a bunch of presets, but what we're going to do is we're going to create a specific size. So you could use this slider here to choose a width, but we're going to type in 940 with a height of 198 and click OK. So this is our masthead, and the first thing I did when I created my digital lobe masthead was I imported an image because I wanted to pick up the colors from that image, and I'll show you how to do that. But first I just want to show you I had a folder that I loaded a bunch of images from the internet into. I had an Apple keyboard and a brain and a bunch of iPhones and stuff. I wasn't really sure how I was going to create the masthead. So I brought in images, and I'll be honest, it took me an hour or so just playing around with the images and resizing them to decide on the images that I finally did select for it. So what I'm going to do is go back to the editor, and I'm going to start by opening up the image of the brain. So I'll click inside the editor. Sometimes you end up going into Firefox. You don't want to do that. Right here you want to click File, Open, and I'm going to select the image that I actually started with was called iStock and a bunch of numbers. So here's my first image of the brain. You'll notice that it opened it up in a brand new window. See, I have two windows. I have the Masthead 2 that I'm working on, and I also have this image here of the brain. It's really easy to get images into the document you're working on by clicking on this one, the iStock image of the brain, and you'll see over here that I've got a bunch of windows that are open. Actually, this navigator I'm going to close, and I'm going to move the layers up to the top because I use a lot of layers. And even this history panel, I'm going to close this as well. And if I need them, I could always find them under View, History, Layers, Tool Options, Navigator. So I could always open them up again by clicking on it. I'm going to expand this a little bit. Okay, so what I'm going to do is with this selected, the iStock brain photo here, I'm going to click and hold. I'm left clicking and holding on the background layer, and I'm dragging it on top of the Masthead 2 document, and then I'm going to let go. And you can see that what it's done is it's basically pasted it right into my Masthead 2 document. So now I can actually get rid of this one. I don't need that anymore, and you can see that it's created its own layer, and the reason it's called background copy is that what the layer was called in the other document. So the first thing I need to do is, and I'll select the Move tool here, which is in the upper right of the toolbar. I'll click on that, and you can see that I can move this image around because it's on its own layer. It's just too big at this point, so I want to resize this image, slightly smaller so I can really fit the face and the brain into the masthead. So what I'm going to do is, with this layer selected, I'm going to go up to Edit, Free Transform, and click on that, and you'll see that I get these little handles on the sides and on the corners. If I grab a corner and I left click and move in, now you can see that this will distort. If I don't want this to distort, I just need to hold down the Shift key and then it will constrain the proportions on that. So I let go of the shift key and I could distort it. If I hold the shift key, it forces the image to keep the same aspect ratio. Okay, so that's a pretty good size, I think, right there. So I'm going to let go of my mouse button and then let go of my shift key, and now I can move it around. So I placed it over here on the side, and I actually made it a little wider just to distort the image slightly from the original image. So I'm just going to click and drag a little bit to the right, and you can see that it just made it a little wider. I'm going to just place it here for now. And what I want to do at this point, I'm going to hit enter first of all to commit to that transformation there. This black area around the head, I really want to get rid of this. Okay, so to do this, I'm going to use the wand tool, which is right here, wand tool, keyboard shortcut W. I'm going to select that, and then I'm just going to click in the black area. I've noticed actually the tolerance here, the default is 21. I'm going to change it to 33 only because that's what Photoshop's default is, and I used it before and it worked fine. So I'm going to click in the black area, and you can see how it has selected just that black. And then I can hit delete on my keyboard, and it's deleted all the black that was selected. So to deselect that, I can hit Control D on my keyboard, or I can go up to Edit, Deselect All. Okay, so that's good. Now the only other thing I want to do is I want to have the person facing the other way. So to do that, I'm going to go up to Layer, and then Flip Layer Horizontal. And now he's facing the other way. The next step that I want to do is I want to create a background. If you'll notice that my masthead, I have a very dark blue, and as it moves across it goes to a lighter blue. So the way that I did that was by using a gradient tool. So I'll go back to my image, and I'm going to select the gradient tool, which is right here. Gradient tool. Now what I want to do is have it go dark to light. So you can see right now if I were to use it, it would be white to black. And I'll actually show you. I'm going to click on the background layer and just click and drag across, and you can see that it's going from white to black. So I'll undo that by hitting Control Z, and what I want to do is have it go dark blue to a light blue. And the reason that I open this image is I want to really select a blue that's in this face. And to do that, what I'm going to do is I want to change this gradient color. So I'll click on the gradient, and here's this color chip right here. I want to click on that color chip to make sure it's selected, and then click Color. And then if I go outside of the document, you'll notice that I get the eyedropper tool, and this will choose the color. So I'm going to click on this dark blue right here in his face, and I'll click OK. And then what I want to do is I want to choose a lighter blue for the right side of my gradient. So again, I'll click on that color chip, click on color, come over here, and I'll choose a lighter blue from the head. And actually I'm just going to make it maybe just even a little lighter, and I'll click OK. So now this is my new gradient. So I can click back in the gradient to get rid of it, and now what I'll do is I'll click, hold my mouse down, drag to the right, and then let go. And now you can see how the gradient goes from dark blue to light blue. Beautiful. Okay. Now the next thing that I did in my masthead here is that I've created a bunch of squares that are on top of my brain image. So, and to do that, what I did was I can make a copy of this layer by right clicking on it and clicking duplicate layer, or I can also just click on that and drag down to the create new layer icon, which is this little icon right down here. But either way, now I have a copy of this. So if I turn this layer off underneath by clicking on this little check here, you can see these will turn them on and off. So I'll turn this one on, and what I want to do is apply a filter to this particular layer. And to do that, I'm going to go with this layer selected. I'll go to Filter, and in this case I used Point and Eyes. And you can see the default is dots. I actually use squares. So I can choose squares. You can choose small circles, large circles, or squares. and you can see how it changes the image. So what I want is squares, and I'll click OK. Now if I zoom in, there's a number of ways you can zoom in and out. One way is I could double click on this magnifying glass down here, the zoom tool. By double clicking on it, it brings it to the actual pixels. Okay? Or you can go up to view and you can zoom out, you can zoom in, you can show all. You can also hit Control minus and plus on your keyboard. What I actually did, if you notice, there's really two images here. You could kind of see an image underneath my squares, and the way that I did that was I selected this background copy here. Okay, I'm just going to take a minute and name my layers so it makes a little bit more sense. We'll call this Brain 1 and we'll call this Brain 2. Okay, so if I turn on and off Brain 2, you'll see underneath is the Brain 1, the original image that I used. Okay, so what I want to do is have these squares be semi-transparent. So to do that, with this layer selected, Brain 2, I'm going to click here where it says opacity, and I'm going to slowly move this to the left, and you can see that I could control how much of the layer underneath you can see. So I think I'll go with it maybe like that. So there, now you could see that if I turn it on and off, you're still seeing a little bit of the image underneath, but it's being slightly covered by the squares. So the next thing that I had done with this image is you can see that there's a slight drop shadow here on the face. So I'll go back and to create that with this layer selected, and this is a very powerful tool here. You can right click and choose layer styles, or you can click on the layer that you want to have the layer style apply to, and this right here, you can't see it because there you go. If you roll over right here, you'll see this is a way to add a layer style as well. So I'll click on that. I'll move this slightly out of the way so I can see what I'm working on, and I'm going to apply a drop shadow. So I'll select this box, and you can see right now it's a very hard drop shadow. So I'll click on drop shadow, the text here, and you can see that I've got these settings here. First of all, I can play with the distance. I can move it further away or closer. The size, I can play with the size, and by playing with the size it really softens it up. And I can also play with the opacity setting, how much shadow it's actually producing. And finally I can adjust the angle. I'm going to actually have it coming at minus 59 degrees, and then I'll click OK. So now you can see that I have a drop shadow there.